I walked into my home office and froze. Riley sat at my desk, his fingers still hovering over my keyboard. The screen showed my project folder, empty. 5 years of cybersecurity work, gone. He looked up at me and grinned. "Relax, it's just a prank," he said, spinning my chair around like he owned the place. My heart hammered against my ribs. 5 years, hundreds of clients, thousands of hours. All the code, the frameworks, the security protocols I'd built from nothing. My hands went numb. "Riley, what did you just do?" He shrugged, that smug smile still plastered on his face. "Deleted some folders. Calm down. It's not like anyone pays you for this stuff anyway." I stood there paralyzed. The room went completely silent except for the hum of my computer fan. Then I did something that would change everything. I turned slowly toward the small black device mounted on my bookshelf. The red recording light blinked steadily. I looked directly into the camera and said quietly, "Test complete." Riley's smile faltered. "What test?" I didn't answer. I was too busy watching his face as the realization started to dawn. "It's not like that crap was important anyway," he muttered, but his voice had lost its edge. "Let me back up. My name is Mara. I'm 52 years old, divorced, and I've spent the last 5 years building a cybersecurity consulting business that nobody in my family believed would work. Not my ex-husband, who called it a midlife crisis hobby. Not my mother, who kept asking when I'd get a real job. And definitely not my younger brother Riley, who moved into my spare bedroom 8 months ago after what he called hard times. The hard times turned out to be getting fired from 3 jobs in 2 years for personality conflicts. What that actually meant was Riley couldn't keep his mouth shut or his hands off things that weren't his. But he was family, and when he showed up at my door with 2 suitcases and a sob story about needing a fresh start, I let him in. Big mistake. Within a month, he'd taken over my living room. Within 2, he was eating my food and using my home office whenever he felt like it. By month 3, he was openly mocking my work. Playing computer games all day, he'd say to his friends on the phone, loud enough for me to hear, "Must be nice." But here's what Riley didn't know. That folder he just deleted, it was bait, and he'd just taken it. My phone buzzed 30 seconds after Riley walked out of my office. I picked it up already knowing who it would be. "Miss Mara? This is Angela from Sterling Dynamics. Mr. Vaughn wanted me to confirm we're still on schedule for the security report next week." Sterling Dynamics, Riley's new employer. The job he'd been bragging about for the past month. The one where he worked in their IT department, convinced he was God's gift to technology. "Yes, Angela." "Everything's on track," I said calmly. "Excellent. The CEO is very interested in your findings. Corporate espionage has been a real concern." I could hear Riley in the kitchen, opening my fridge, laughing about something on his phone. He had no idea that the company he worked for had hired me 6 months ago to test their internal security vulnerabilities, and he definitely had no idea he'd just become Exhibit A in my final report. "Tell Mr. Vaughn I'll have something very interesting to show him," I said. After I hung up, I stood in the doorway watching Riley. He cracked open one of my beers and sprawled on my couch like he owned it. I whispered to myself, "You just failed your own company's security test." Later that night, I sat in my office reviewing the footage. Riley thought he'd deleted everything, but what he'd actually deleted was a decoy folder I'd created specifically for this test. My real work lived on an encrypted partition he couldn't even see. Every client file, every line of code, every security protocol, completely safe. I'd learned a long time ago never to trust anything important to a single location, especially not when Riley was around. I pulled up my backup logs. Everything was there. 5 years of work, perfectly intact. But Riley didn't need to know that. Let him think he'd won. I was about to close my laptop when I heard him on the phone in the next room. His voice carried through the thin walls. "Yeah, man, I just dealt with some uptight hag who thinks she's a hacker," he said, laughing. "She was working on this project like it was the Manhattan Project or something. Deleted the whole thing. She looked like she was gonna cry." More laughter. "Nah, she won't do anything. She never does. She's too much of a pushover." I sat there in the dark, listening to my own brother mock me to his friends, my hands clenched into fists. This wasn't the first time Riley had done something like this. It was just the first time I'd been ready for it. The memory hit me hard. We were in college. I was 20, Riley was 16. I'd spent months coding a security program for my senior project. It was brilliant. Professors said it was graduate-level work. Then Riley asked if he could look at it for a school assignment. I said yes, because he was my little brother and I wanted to help. 2 weeks later, he submitted my entire program to a prestigious high school tech competition. He won first place and a full scholarship. When I confronted him, he claimed he'd improved my work and it was therefore his. My parents believed him. My father actually said, "Mara, don't be dramatic. It's wonderful that Riley is showing such initiative." I had proof it was my code. I had timestamps, draft versions, everything. But my mother pulled me aside and said, "Family is more important than pride. Let this go." So I did. I let it go. I stayed quiet. I was the good daughter who didn't make waves, and Riley learned he could take what he wanted from me without consequences. I pulled up an old voicemail from my mother, saved on my phone. Her voice floated through the speaker. "Mara, honey, you need to forgive and move on. That's what family does." I deleted it. I was done forgiving. I was done moving on. The next morning, I staged a phone call. I made sure to have it right outside Riley's bedroom door, speaking just loud enough for him to hear. "Yes, this is a new client," I said into my phone, even though no one was on the other end. A major corporation. They're looking at a 6-figure contract for ongoing security consultation. I paused, listening to the silence from Riley's room. I could picture him pressed against the door. "The initial payment alone would be $75,000, I continued, plus quarterly retainers. That would get his attention. Riley loved money, especially money he thought I didn't deserve. Sure enough, 10 minutes later, he appeared in the kitchen while I was making coffee. "So, I heard you on the phone," he said, trying to sound casual. "New client?" "Maybe," I said, not looking at him. "What kind of company?" "Tech sector. Security consulting. How much are they paying?" I smiled into my coffee mug. Enough. He kept pushing, asking invasive questions about the scope, the timeline, the deliverables. I gave him just enough information to seem real, but vague enough to stay protected. That night, I found him going through my briefcase in the hallway. He jumped when he saw me, making up some excuse about looking for a pen. I just smiled and walked away. 3 days later, Riley struck again. I'd left another decoy file on my desktop, this one labeled New Client Proposal, Draft. I made sure it looked important, lots of technical jargon, fake company names, impressive numbers. I watched through my security camera as Riley sat down at my desk while I was supposedly out grocery shopping. He found the file within 30 seconds. His fingers flew over the keyboard, deleting it with the same smug confidence he'd had the first time. But this time, he pulled out his phone and recorded himself doing it. He actually filmed himself deleting my work, laughing into the camera about protecting the world from her nerd empire. The footage was gold. Clear video of Riley accessing my computer without permission, intentionally destroying files, and bragging about it on video. He just handed me everything I needed. My phone buzzed. An email from Sterling Dynamics. Final review scheduled for May 15th. Please prepare a comprehensive breach report including all internal vulnerability findings. I had 10 days. I sat down and opened a new file on my encrypted drive. I titled it Cold File, subject, Riley. Then I started compiling everything. The cold file grew quickly. I had security camera footage from 4 different angles showing Riley accessing my computer. I had timestamps matching his work schedule at Sterling Dynamics. I had audio logs of him bragging about sabotaging my work. I had network access logs showing unauthorized attempts to breach my encrypted files. Every piece of evidence was dated, stamped, and organized into a single, devastating presentation. The best part? Riley had no idea any of this existed. He thought he was getting away with it. He thought I was just sitting here, taking his abuse like I always had. My phone rang. I didn't recognize the number. "Ms. Mara? This is Vincent Torres, Director of Security at Sterling Dynamics." My pulse quickened. "We've detected some unusual internal activity," he continued. "Unauthorized file access, some suspicious network behavior. It might be related to your security assessment. Can we meet in person?" "Absolutely," I said. "I have some findings that might interest you." "Excellent. How about tomorrow? 2 o'clock?" "Perfect." After we hung up, I looked at Riley's bedroom door. He was in there playing video games, laughing at something on his headset. He had no idea his entire world was about to collapse. I spent the rest of the night polishing my report. Every detail had to be perfect. Every piece of evidence had to be ironclad. Tomorrow, the trap will start to close. The next evening, I invited Riley to dinner. Not just any dinner, a business dinner with one of my tech clients. It's actually a favor, I told him. The guy's a little awkward socially. I thought having another tech person there might help the conversation flow. Riley's eyes lit up. A chance to network, to show off, to prove he was smarter than me. Of course, he said yes. We met at a nice steakhouse downtown. The man waiting at the table stood when we approached. He was tall, graying at the temples, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Riley's car. "Riley, this is Marcus Vaughn," I said. "Marcus, my brother Riley." Riley shook his hand eagerly, already launching into some story about his work in IT. Marcus listened politely, nodding at appropriate moments. Riley dominated the conversation. He threw around technical terms he barely understood. He talked about revolutionary ideas that were actually common industry practices. He even suggested that Sterling Dynamics, his own company, could use fresh perspectives like his. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "You work at Sterling, don't you, Riley?" "Oh yeah, but you know how corporate environments are. They don't always recognize innovation." I sat quietly, cutting my steak, watching Riley dig himself deeper. What Riley didn't know was that Marcus Vaughn was the executive vice president of Sterling Dynamics, and he knew exactly who I was. After dinner, Riley practically bounced to the car. "That was great," he said. "Did you see how impressed he was? I bet he'd hire me before you if he had a consulting position open." I just smiled. "Maybe. Seriously, Mara, you should introduce me to more of your contacts. I could really help you network better. You're too awkward with people." My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus Vaughn. "The footage was damning. Can you keep going? We need to see how far this goes." I typed back, "Absolutely." Riley kept talking the whole drive home, oblivious. He was already planning what he'd wear to his inevitable interview with Marcus. He was already spending money he didn't have on ideas he didn't understand. I pulled into our driveway and Riley finally stopped talking. "Hey, thanks for including me tonight," he said. For a moment, he almost sounded genuine. "I know we don't always see eye to eye, but yeah, thanks." I looked at him. My little brother. The one who'd stolen my code, mocked my work, sabotaged my projects, and laughed about it to his friends. "You're welcome," I said. He'd thank me differently when this was over. The next few days, Riley's attitude shifted. He became hostile, defensive. He started making comments about how he'd helped me test my security systems. "Really, you should be thanking me," he said over breakfast. "I'm making your stuff better by finding the weaknesses." "You're deleting my files, Riley. That's not helping." "It's constructive criticism. You're too sensitive." I bit my tongue. Let him think whatever he wants. Let him build his defense in his head. It wouldn't matter soon. That afternoon, I found something that made my blood run cold. A USB drive in my desk drawer, one I didn't put there. I plugged it into an isolated laptop and checked the contents. My files, client lists, passwords, project details. Everything Riley could access, he'd copied onto this drive. I ran a trace on the drive's activity log. He'd been copying my files for weeks, storing them, probably planning to use them somehow. Maybe sell them, maybe pass them off as his own. I added the USB drive to the cold file, evidence item number 47. Riley was in the living room watching TV when I walked past. He didn't even look up. "Riley," I said quietly. "What?" "Nothing. Just wanted to say goodnight." He grunted in response. I went to my office and called my lawyer. It was time to protect myself legally. My lawyer, Patricia, listened carefully as I explained the situation. "You need to file an intellectual property protection notice," she said. "Get everything under NDA immediately. If Riley tries to claim any of your work as his, you'll have legal recourse." "Can we do it without him knowing?" "Absolutely. I'll have the paperwork ready by tomorrow." I signed the documents the next day. Every piece of code, every security protocol, every client relationship, all legally bound to me under confidentiality agreements. Riley couldn't touch any of it without facing serious legal consequences. But I wasn't done yet. I created one more dummy file and left it prominently on my desktop. Client payments, confidential. Inside was a fake spreadsheet showing imaginary payments from imaginary clients. The amounts were large enough to be tempting, small enough to seem real. Contact information, payment schedules, everything perfectly crafted to look legitimate. Then I waited. It took Riley less than 2 days to take the bait. I watched on my security camera as he copied the file to another USB drive, his face lit up with excitement. He thought he'd hit the jackpot. A list of my clients, their payment information, everything he needed to either blackmail me or sell to competitors. He had no idea every single contact in that file was fake, or that every email address routed directly to Sterling Dynamics' internal security monitoring system. Riley sent the file that same evening. I watched it happen in real time through my network monitoring software. The email went to someone named K. Torres, a name he must have found somewhere online. He probably thought he was being clever, reaching out to a competitor who might want my client list. What Riley didn't know was that K. Torres was Catherine Torres, Vincent Torres's sister. She worked in Sterling's internal security division as a honeypot specialist, someone who posed as an outside contact to catch potential security breaches. The email pinged their system immediately. Within minutes, security teams were tracing it back to its source: Riley's work computer, Riley's personal email, Riley's digital fingerprints all over an attempted theft of proprietary information. My phone rang. "Ms. Mara, it's Vincent Torres. We've got him. The trace led directly to your brother's workstation. This is exactly the kind of internal threat we hired you to identify. What happens now? We'll need to follow protocol. He'll be called in for questioning. But based on what we've seen, this is termination-level behavior, possibly criminal." I should have felt bad. He was my brother, but all I felt was cold satisfaction. "Do what you need to do," I said. "We will. And Mara, this has been the most effective security assessment we've ever commissioned. Your methodology is extraordinary." After I hung up, I sat in the dark of my office. Riley was in his room, probably feeling proud of himself for sending that email, probably imagining the money he'd make. He had no idea the walls were already closing in. Riley came home 3 days later looking shaken. He threw his keys on the counter harder than necessary. "Bad day?" I asked, not looking up from my laptop. "They gave me a warning at work, some bullshit about inappropriate conduct." "What kind of conduct?" "I don't know. They mentioned something about unauthorized file movement. It's probably just corporate paranoia." I nodded sympathetically. "That's frustrating. It's your fault, you know." I looked up. "Excuse me?" "This whole thing. You've been working with Sterling, right? And you probably said something that made them suspicious of their own employees." "Riley, I'm doing security consulting. That's literally the job." He glared at me. "Well, maybe you should tell them to back off. Some of us actually need to work there." "I'll see what I can do," I lied. He stormed off to his room. I heard him on the phone complaining to someone about corporate witch hunts and paranoid management. My phone buzzed. A text from Vincent. "He's blaming you. This is escalating. Be careful." I typed back, "I know. I'm ready." The next phase was about to begin, and Riley was walking right into it. The confrontation happened on a Tuesday evening. I was making dinner when Riley burst into the kitchen, his face red with anger. "You're ruining my career," he shouted. I set down my knife calmly. "What are you talking about?" "Sterling. They're investigating me because of you, because of your paranoid security bullshit." "Riley, if they're investigating you, maybe you should think about why." "I haven't done anything wrong. You deleted my files twice. You copied my client information. You sent confidential data to an outside contact. Which part of that is nothing wrong?" His face went white. How did I know?" "Really, Riley? I'm a cybersecurity consultant. Did you think I wouldn't notice?" "You set me up." "No, you set yourself up. I just documented it." He stepped closer, his fists clenched. For a moment, I thought he might actually hit me. But then he seemed to deflate, all that rage collapsing into something that looked almost like fear. "You can't do this to me," he said quietly. "I'm your brother. You were my brother when you stole my scholarship code. You were my brother when you mocked my work to your friends. You were my brother when you sabotaged my projects. Being family didn't stop you then. That was different. I was a kid. You're 38 years old, Riley. When does it stop being I was just a kid and start being I'm just an asshole?" His mouth opened and closed. He had no answer. "I haven't even started," I said quietly. He stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Then he turned and left. The next morning, I submitted my full report to Sterling Dynamics. It was comprehensive, detailed, and absolutely damning. I documented every aspect of Riley's behavior, not just as evidence against him, but as a demonstration of real-world internal threats. The report included a second phase one hadn't told them about: resilience under domestic threat. How companies needed to protect employees who might face sabotage from their own families or personal relationships. Marcus Vaughn called me personally after reviewing it. "This is extraordinary work, Mara. The board wants to implement your recommendations across all departments. But we need to complete the scenario. Can you proceed with the final phase?" "What does that involve?" "Set up one more test. We need to see how far he'll go when he feels cornered. Can you do that safely?" I thought about it. Riley was getting desperate. Desperate people made mistakes. "Yes," I said. "I can do that." That afternoon, I created one final fake project. I made it visible on our home network, just technical enough to seem real, just valuable enough to be tempting. Then I waited for Riley to take the bait. It didn't take long. Riley triggered the alarm at 3 a.m. I woke up to my phone buzzing with security alerts. He'd tried to access the fake project file from his laptop. The moment he clicked on it, it sent out a breach alert to Sterling's IT security system. They could trace the attempt directly to his device, his location, his digital signature. Within minutes, their automated systems had isolated his work account. His badge access was suspended. Every file he'd ever touched at Sterling was flagged for review. I watched it all happen in real time from my encrypted monitoring station. By sunrise, Riley's entire digital presence at Sterling Dynamics had been locked down. He couldn't access email, couldn't log into systems, couldn't even open the building's front door with his badge. He didn't know any of this yet. He was still asleep, probably dreaming about whatever money he thought he'd make from stealing my work. When he woke up and tried to go to work, he'd find out just how thoroughly he'd destroyed himself. I made coffee and waited for the phone call. It came at 7:45. "They locked me out," Riley shouted into the phone. "My badge doesn't work. My email's disabled. What the hell is happening?" "I don't know, Riley. Maybe you should call them." "This is your fault. You did this." "I'm a consultant, Riley. I don't have the power to lock anyone out of anything." That was technically true. I just provided the evidence. Sterling made their own decisions. He hung up on me. By noon, the rumors had started at Sterling. I knew because Catherine Torres called to give me an update. "It's spreading through the company like wildfire," she said. "Someone in IT tried to sabotage a security contractor. Everyone's talking about it." "How is Riley handling it?" "He's on administrative leave pending investigation. He called HR 14 times this morning. He's panicking." "Good. Let him panic. Let him feel what I felt when he deleted 5 years of my work. Let him understand what it's like to watch everything collapse because of someone else's cruelty." My doorbell rang at 2 p.m. Riley stood there looking worse than I'd ever seen him. His eyes were red. His hands shook. "Mara, please, you have to help me. Call someone. Talk to them. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. Was it a misunderstanding when you deleted my files?" I was joking around. I didn't think. "That's your problem, Riley. You never think. You just take and expect everyone else to clean up after you. Please, I'll lose everything." I handed him a slip of paper with a phone number on it. "Call them. They'll explain everything." He looked at the number, confused. "Who is this?" "Sterling's legal department. They have some questions for you." His face went pale. "Legal? Why do I need to talk to legal?" "Because you committed corporate espionage, Riley. And they have proof." He stared at me, finally understanding just how bad this was. Then he turned and ran to his car. I closed the door and went back to my office. Riley's meeting with Sterling's legal department happened on a Friday. I wasn't there, but Catherine gave me a full report afterward. They'd played the video of him deleting my files. They'd shown him the timestamps of his unauthorized network access. They'd presented the email he sent with my fake client list. They'd documented every single move he'd made. Riley had tried to defend himself. He claimed he was helping me test my security. He said it was all a family disagreement blown out of proportion. Then They showed him the footage of him filming himself deleting my files while laughing about protecting the world from my nerd empire. That killed any sympathy in the room. We've determined this to be intentional sabotage, the head of legal told him. You accessed confidential information, attempted to distribute proprietary data, and violated multiple company policies. Your employment is terminated, effective immediately. Riley had begged. He'd cried. He'd promised to do better. They escorted him out of the building with a security guard. When Catherine finished telling me all this, I felt nothing. No triumph, no sadness, just a cold sense of completion. Thank you for letting me know, I said. He brought this on himself, Mara. You just documented it. Maybe that was true. Maybe I was just the mirror that finally showed Riley who he really was. Riley came home drunk that night. I heard him stumbling through the front door, knocking things over, cursing. I stayed in my office with the door locked. He pounded on my door. Mara, we need to talk. I opened it slowly. He looked terrible, red eyes, wrinkled clothes, reeking of whiskey. You destroyed me, he slurred. My own sister destroyed me. I held out an envelope. Your 30-day notice. You need to find somewhere else to live. He stared at the envelope like it was a snake. Then he snatched it from my hand, ripped it open, and threw it at my feet. You were nothing before me, he screamed. Nothing. I made you relevant. I gave you purpose by letting you help me, and this is how you repay me? I looked at him, this man I'd shared a childhood with, and felt nothing but pity. Get out of my office, Riley. This is my house, too. No, it's my house. You're a guest who overstayed his welcome. You have 30 days. He stood there, swaying, trying to think of something cutting to say, but he had nothing left. He'd played all his cards, and they'd all been worthless. Finally, he stumbled away to his room. I heard him crying through the walls. I picked up the scattered papers, put them back in the envelope, and slid them under his door. Sunday morning, I drove to the cemetery where my mother was buried. I hadn't visited in almost a year. Too busy building my business, too focused on surviving. I sat on the bench near her headstone and talked to her like she could hear me. You always told me to be quiet, Mom, to stay in my lane, to not make waves. You said family was more important than pride. A bird landed nearby, watching me. But you were wrong. Riley needed someone to tell him no. He needed consequences, and by protecting him, you made him worse. I thought about all those years of being a good daughter, the one who didn't complain, the one who forgave, the one who stayed silent while Riley took credit for my work and mocked me to his friends. I'm done being quiet, I said. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus Vaughn. Board meeting tomorrow. They want to discuss your contract. This is bigger than we initially thought. I texted back. I'll be there. As I walked back to my car, I felt lighter somehow. Like I'd been carrying weight I didn't know I had, and finally set it down. Tomorrow will be interesting. I walked into Sterling Dynamics headquarters wearing my best blazer and boots. The receptionist smiled when she saw me. Miss Mara, they're waiting for you in the executive conference room. The room was all glass and chrome, overlooking the city. 8 people sat around the table, the board of directors. Marcus Vaughn stood at the head. Mara, thank you for coming. Please sit. I took the seat across from him, my hands steady. We've reviewed your report, Marcus began. All 27 pages, every piece of evidence, every recommendation. It's the most comprehensive security assessment we've ever received. He paused, letting that sink in. Your methodology, using real-world scenarios, testing human vulnerabilities, documenting insider threats, it's revolutionary. We want to implement it company-wide. One of the board members, an older woman with silver hair, leaned forward. We're prepared to offer you a full contract, not just for this project, but ongoing security consultation and leadership training. Another board member added, we're also creating a new position, Director of Human Security Systems. We'd like you to head the department. I sat there, processing what they'd just said. A full contract, a leadership position, everything I'd worked for, everything my family said I'd never achieve. Your system passed, Marcus said, and so did you. I smiled. I accept. 3 months later, Sterling Dynamics held a company-wide security conference. I was the keynote speaker. I stood backstage, watching the crowd filter in. Executives, managers, security personnel from every department. The room held 300 people, all there to hear about the new security protocols we'd developed. That's when I saw him. Riley, wearing a delivery uniform, pushing a cart of catering supplies. He was working for the catering company contracted for the event. Our eyes met across the room. He froze. I was called on stage a moment later. The applause was genuine, warm. Marcus introduced me, talking about innovation and forward thinking. I shook his hand and took the microphone. I looked out at the audience and saw Riley at the back of the room. He was supposed to be setting up drinks, but he'd stopped, staring at me on that stage. I began my presentation. I talked about insider threats, about the importance of protecting intellectual property, about how the people closest to you could sometimes be the biggest security risk. Riley's hands shook. The tray he was holding started to tilt. Then it fell, glasses crashing to the floor. Everyone turned. Security moved toward him. He ran. I kept speaking, not missing a beat. Because Riley's reaction wasn't my problem anymore. He'd made his choices. Now he lives with them. After the conference, I was loading my car when Riley appeared. He must have waited in the parking garage for me. "Mara, please, just listen." I turned slowly. He looked older somehow, beaten down. The smugness was gone, replaced by desperation. "I need help. I can't find steady work. Everyone in tech knows what happened. Please, just talk to someone. Tell them I didn't mean it." "But you did mean it, Riley. I was stupid. I was jealous. But I'm your brother. Doesn't that count for something?" I thought about that question. About all the times being family was supposed to excuse his behavior. All the times I was supposed to forgive because of blood. "You did mean it," I said quietly. "Every time you stole my work, every time you mocked my career, every time you sabotaged my projects, you meant it, and I didn't stop you. That's the difference between us." "What's the difference?" "You thought you were playing me, but I was always playing the long game." He stood there, mouth open, finally understanding. I'd documented everything. I'd built my case. I'd turned his own actions into evidence. And I'd done it all while he thought he was winning. "Goodbye, Riley." I got in my car and drove away. In my rearview mirror, I watched him standing alone in that parking garage, finally facing the consequences he'd avoided his whole life. 6 months later, I signed the final contract at Sterling Dynamics. Director of Human Security Systems, 6-figure salary, full benefits, and a team of 12 people reporting to me. I sat at my new desk in my new office, looking out at the city. My computer hummed quietly. My credentials hung on the wall. Everything I'd built, everything I'd fought for, finally recognized. Riley had texted me once in those 6 months. A long, rambling apology that ended with a request for money. I'd deleted it without responding. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt. I was just done. Done with being the family punching bag. Done with making myself smaller so others could feel bigger. Done with forgiving people who never learned from their mistakes. My assistant knocked on my door. "Miss Mara, your 3 o'clock is here." I closed my laptop and stood up. I had work to do. Real work. Important work. The kind of work my family said I'd never be capable of. Outside my window, the city stretched out in all directions. Somewhere out there, Riley was delivering food or stocking shelves or doing whatever job he could find. I didn't wish him harm. I just didn't wish him anything at all. He thought he was playing me. But I was always playing the long game, and in the end, the long game always wins.